let's see, I will share my screen here. Can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'll just quickly review our agenda here. First, I'd like to ask everyone to just input your name, group that you work with, and your position in the chat box, and that will serve as our introductions today, just since we have a fairly large group. So if everyone could please go do that now, that would be great. And then we will hear from the City of Boulder, Longmont, Town of Lyons, and Boulder County. And then we'll have a safety roundtable where we will open up the floor for all non-presenting agencies and groups that are here today to speak up and give us a quick safety update if you would like. Then we'll do some poll questions and kind of wrap up. So now we can dive into our presentations. If you're ready to go, Devin, I will pull up your slides here.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for presenting today.
Thank you. All right, well, good morning, everyone. My name is Devin Joslin. I'm the principal traffic engineer with the City of Boulder, and today I'm going to be presenting to this group an update on our update to what we call our Safe Streets report. Next slide, please. There are four main things I'm going to cover during this presentation, and in the interest of time, I will try to keep it brief. I think I've got about 15 minutes allocated to me, but just want to give you an introduction of what it is, how we analyze the crash data, and then some of the trends that we found, and then just kind of the next steps and what this group can expect moving forward. Next slide. Next slide. So what is the Safe Streets report? Really, it's a quantitative summary of all the crash data that has been compiled within a 3-year period in the city. And we look at the crash data to just try to identify high-level trends and problem areas within the city. And in this case, we are on the 4th edition of our report, and the 4th edition analyzes crash data for the period 2018 to 2020. And the information in the report is used to identify, prioritize, plan, and implement responses to crashes to improve travel safety within the City of Boulder. And it falls in line with the Vision Zero objectives you can see here, namely that 5th one, improve data and be transparent. Next slide, please. And so in terms of the 4 E's, the report really falls under evaluation, and that has to do with why, what, and when. And there's a Vision Zero guiding principle that wants you to use a people-focused, data-driven, action-oriented, and interdisciplinary approach to carrying out the 4 E's. And we think that the report falls into that because it allows us to reflect upon changes that may have been made within the prior 3-year period, and really allow us to compare if those mitigation measures we've installed have made a difference, as well as identify any new trends that may have popped up within the city. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the 4th edition of the report looking at 2018 through 2020 crash data. And you can see that Vision Zero was really adopted in the city of Boulder in 2014 with our transportation master plan. Next slide, please. You know, most of the people in this group, I'm sure, are well aware of this already, but just to get everyone on the same page, when we talk severe crashes, those are crashes that involve a fatality or incapacitating injury. And those 2 crash types are what we group together and refer to as severe crashes throughout this presentation and within our Safe Streets report. And in line with many other Vision Zero cities, it is the goal of Vision Zero within Boulder to eliminate all crashes that result in a fatality or incapacitating injury. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to go over the methodology and just discuss some things that changed with this update of the report. Next slide, please. So overall, we really didn't change the way that we analyze the crash data. We generally kept it pretty consistent from prior reports. The thing to note that we did change this time around was that we removed private property crashes from the analysis. And that resulted in about 410 crashes per year being removed from the data set, but only 1% of those on private property result in severe injuries. And this change was made for three main reasons. Really, we found in doing some research that many other Vision Zero cities do not report crashes that occur on private property. The second thing is that we really don't have any jurisdiction to mitigate crashes that occur on private property. And sometimes crash reports on private property lack good documentation and a full narrative of what really occurred. So that's really why we chose to eliminate private property crashes. But we are going to provide a section within our report that will allow reviewers to do an apples to apples comparison, whereby they can compare numbers in this update to numbers in the prior reports that did include private property crashes. The next thing, of course, was to account for the COVID-19 impacts that we experienced in 2020 in terms of changes to our crash data. And we wanted to look at crash reduction in terms of exposure. And so we did a few things in terms of reviewing vehicle miles traveled and also bicycle volumes within the city. And the third change we made was to kind of separate our Vision Zero action plan from the Safe Streets report. We have a vision to change our action plan to make it much more actionable and kind of fiscally constrained. And we envision taking most of next year to complete that update to our action plan. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to get into kind of the meat of the analysis and really provide some summary of the high level crash trends within the city of Boulder. Next slide, please. So this infographic provides a snapshot of the key findings and trends based on the 2018 to 2020 crash data analysis and kind of comparing that to prior trends dating all the way back to the year 2009. And really what we find in the city is that our total crashes per year have been trending down since the year 2016. Total crashes peaked at around 2,600 total crashes in 2016, then declined to approximately 2,200 total crashes in 2019. And in 2020, we had about 1,200 total crashes. What we've seen in terms of severe crashes is that those have been holding steady, ranging between about 55 and 60 crashes per year, except for 2020, in which we had 38 severe crashes. And then if you look at the line in the middle, you can see a little bit more related to our analysis of COVID-19 impacts. What we found was total crashes were down about 44% in 2020 compared to the year 2019. Severe crashes were down 31% in 2020 compared to the year 2019. And the vehicle miles traveled dropped about 30%. So we do think there was even a slight downward trend in 2020 when you look at the crash changes relative to the vehicle miles traveled. And then at the bottom, you can see that we have what we identified as 5 areas of concern. And really those are crashes that are involving pedestrians, bicycles, left turns, speeding, and older drivers, those that are 65 and older. And you can see that crash trends for peds, bikes, and left turns have generally held pretty steady, but we did see an increase in speed-related and crashes involving older drivers. And at the bottom, you can see that what we found was really nearly 2/3 of our severe crashes occur on our arterial roadways, although those roadways make up just 16% of our centerline miles within the city. Next slide, please. So these next few slides will just walk you through those 5 areas of concern in a little bit more detail. And what we found in terms of the severity for pedestrian crashes was that although pedestrian crashes only account for 2% of all crashes, they are 18% of our total severe crashes. And you can see some of the other trends listed there on the slide. Fortunately, we do have some projects in the works that are planned to address some of our problem areas. Next slide, please. These next 4, or this slide explains really the most common pedestrian crash types that we experience in the city. And these were identified through our use of the Pedestrian and Bike Crash Analysis tool, the PBCAT. And really what you find here is that these 4 crash types represent half of all of our pedestrian crashes and 75% of all our severe pedestrian crashes. And in particular, just draw your attention to the dash and dart out, as those 2 crash types represent over 1/3 of our pedestrian crashes. So that's kind of an interesting finding, and I think that's one that is maybe geared a little bit more toward education as compared to engineering. Although we have spoken to some colleagues at Lakewood and are exploring some ways to potentially remind pedestrians of the need to get an appropriate gap before they step out into the roadway. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned, we have had a few pedestrian improvement projects that were completed recently, and many more that are in the works, either for next year or 2023. We installed an RRFB at 23rd and Canyon, and we also installed a number of projects this year through our Vision Innovation Program. And those were projects that use paint and plastic delineators to form curb extensions, pedestrian refuge islands, and other traffic calming type treatments. And as you can see, we have quite a list of planned projects next year, just general crosswalk improvements or curb extensions. And in the case of Baseline Road and Canyon Creek, we'll be changing out an RRFB to a full traffic signal. Next slide, please. In terms of bike crashes, again, what we find is that although they represent 6% of our total crashes, they account for 36% of our total severe crashes. And really what we find is that quite a few of them happen within intersections. So that was kind of an interesting point, that many of our bike crashes, 83% of them occur within an intersection. And then we also see our severe crashes with bicyclists occurring in intersections. Next slide, please. Again, this fell out of the PBCAT analysis that we did, and these are the 4 most common crash types involving bicycles. And these account for nearly half, 46% of all bicycle crashes, and 37% of our severe bicycle crashes. These trends generally follow trends from the prior reports. There really weren't any surprises here, but just interesting to find that a small set of crash types can represent a large portion of your crashes. Next slide, please. So in terms of bicycle improvements, it's a similar theme as pedestrian improvements. We've installed a number of bicycle improvements both this year, and then we have a number that are planned next year, namely some buffered bike lanes, as well as other bike lane and bike box type improvements along Table Mesa Drive. My understanding is that today we got kicked off installing our Folsom Street vertically separated bike lanes. So that will be, I think, sort of the first example of a curb separated and protected bike lane within the city. So we're excited to see that project come to completion here. Next slide, please. In terms of left turn crashes, it's a similar story. I think what we found here, though, that was a little bit of a change in trends is that we are now seeing more left turn type crashes occurring at unsignalized intersections than we had previously seen. So we have found that our mitigation efforts and changes to implement different left turn phasing in terms of flashing yellow arrow, protected permitted, or just protected only phasing, those have been quite effective, but we did see an increase in the number of left turn crashes occurring at unsignalized intersections. Next slide, please. In terms of looking at really the effectiveness of our left turn phasing changes, we had implemented left turn phasing changes at 48 signalized intersection approaches at a total of 25 intersections. And those intersections were pretty much all identified from the prior Safe Streets report. We did have about 15 intersections where we had at least 2 years of after crash data that we could use to compare and as a means of identifying the effectiveness of the left turn phasing changes. And what we found was that really they're pretty dramatically effective. They resulted in an average of an 87% reduction in total crashes per year. Next slide, please. And we are fortunate that we have received quite a bit of funding in grants. We have about 4 different grants that will be kicking off this year and next year that total over about $3 million, which will allow us to continue this work to upgrade our signal system. Many of the upgrades are in line with our Vision Zero efforts to implement flashing yellow arrow and change left turn phasing. The Dr. Cog grant really will allow us to do a more robust upgrade of our signal system and change from radio communication to fiber communication, as well as implement ATSPMs. Next slide, please.
Devin, I'm not sure how many slides you've got left, but we do have one question and you're coming to the end of your time.
Okay, I have about 3 more slides. So in terms of speeding, this was a trend that we did see has increased a little bit in the most recent 3-year period. And really now what we find is that one out of every 3 severe crashes involve speeding. And you can see in terms of the demographics, it's really the younger male drivers that are involved in speeding crashes. Next slide. So there are a number of things we've done to try to mitigate speeds, mostly on our local streets though, in terms of our neighborhood speed management program and our Vision Zero innovation program. The grant that's listed at the top will allow us to take a more comprehensive and holistic look at how we set speed limits within the city and then how we sign speed limits within the city. So we're excited to kick that off next year. Next slide, please. And then in terms of severity of older driver crashes, this was another one that we had seen some pretty sharp increases in the number of older drivers that are involved with crashes. And again, they're overrepresented in terms of the overall percentage of the population that older drivers represent. Really with that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention and allowing me to present this today.
Thanks, Devin. Alexandra, are there some questions in the chat?
Sorry about that. I was on mute. Yes, thanks, Devin. I just read it. The question is, oh, there's 2 questions now. One's from Alex Arnello. Will the bulb out delineators be removed during the snow season?
No, Alex, our plan is to leave those in during the snow season, and we have had some conversation with our city attorney's office relative to how our city code is written. And what we've found through that is that really the area within the curb extension, although it's formed by paint and posts, it is considered an extension of the sidewalk area, and it will be the responsibility of the adjacent property owner to keep a walkway within the the curb extension clear. So we're in the process of kind of notifying the community of that to make sure everyone's aware, and hopefully we'll be seeing those efforts from the community to help keep snow in those areas clear this year.
The next question, now we have two more questions, and we are a little bit over time, but Sue Prant asked, please talk more about the grant to the study speeding, the grant to study speeding.
Sure. So the grant to study speeding is one we got from Dr. Cog through their CMPI program. And really, it's going to allow us to take a look at how we set speed limits. There's been a kind of an archaic trend within the industry to always rely on the 85th percentile speed, but many more approaches have come to light recently through different research, kind of a more context sensitive approach to setting speed limits. And we're hoping that through that grant, we'll be able to explore some of those context sensitive approaches and develop one that works for the city of Boulder.
Sounds like a great grant. Last question from Sam Cole at CDOT Communications. Any correlation that more crashes when students are in session?
You know, I think we did see quite a drop in crashes in 2020 when students were not there. And I think we saw some pretty dramatic drops in impaired crashes. So that was interesting.
Okay, thanks. That was the last question. Thanks. That was a great presentation. I have some questions, but I'll email you later.
All right. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Devin. I will pass the mic off to the City of Longmont now. Whenever you're ready.
All right, thanks, Amy. Tyler Stamey, City of Longmont, Transportation Engineering Administrator. Similar to, it's not exactly the same as Devin's presentation, but similar. I want to talk about some of our crash findings. Each year we do a relatively in-depth analysis of all the crashes that happen in Longmont. We use a 5-year period for our analysis to help try and identify trends, patterns, any areas of concern. So go ahead to the next slide. All right, so here's crash data we have all the way back to 1990, just our annual crashes that happen in Longmont. Really no surprise in that 2020 was a substantial reduction in crashes, but take it with a grain of salt. One of the changes we saw for 2020 was a lot of the crashes went to, if there was no injury or no alcohol or drugs involved, a lot of the reports Longmont was on accident alert. So a lot of those crash reports went to the state and not to our local police department. So I don't have a lot of that data. So again, it is misleading. The good thing you'll see is on the bottom 2 lines there that both the injury or worse and the fatal crashes were down over years prior. So definitely a good trend there. And we did get all those reports, just ones that didn't have injuries or DUI we didn't get. Next slide, please. So here's that same or similar data on crashes per million vehicle miles of travel. So even though our overall crashes were down, the crashes per mile were also down, which was a good trend. And then our injury or worse crash rate was down as well. Actually the lowest we've seen since about 2005 or so. So definitely a good trend we're seeing there with the injury or worse crashes. Next slide, please. Probably no surprise to anyone. Where do we see the majority of crashes happen in town? By and large, it's about 2 to 1 signalized intersections versus unsignalized. Next one. Time of day, when do crashes happen the most? We really see the most crashes happen that the 3 to 4, kind of when school gets out hour, and then again at the peak hour in the PM, so 5 to 6 are really the busiest hours of crashes. Friday tends to be the day of the week with the most crashes overall, and then usually December, kind of the end of the year, we see the most crashes by month. Next slide, please. When we look at the DUI and medical crashes, we had seen since about 2012 quite an increase in the DUI crashes. every year. 2020 was the first year we've seen a reduction in that in about 8 years. But another good trend, again, with 2020 and stay-at-home restrictions, I think that definitely had an impact on that. The medical and the sleep, we've had about 5 years in a row of decline in those type of crashes. Next slide, please. Vulnerable users, again, positive trends here. We saw a reduction in the crash rate for all of the vulnerable users. We have the bicycles, pedestrians, and motorcyclists really among the lowest rates we've had in quite some time for all of those user groups. Next slide, please. Bicycle specific, when we look at bicycle crashes, again, in line with what I've been saying here is positive trends and reductions in at least the total number of crashes or the injury or worse crashes. We did have 2 fatal bike crashes in 2020. Next slide, please. Pedestrian crashes, again, down again in 2020 compared to what we've seen in prior years. It's good to see a couple years of downward trend here as well. Next slide, please. And vulnerable users, again, kind of similar to what Boulder sees and probably everyone else, that the peds, bikes, and motorcyclists make up a really small percentage, about 5% of the crashes in Longmont of the involved in crashes. And I don't have this in a slide, but 48% of those of the fatal crashes involve those vulnerable users. And overall, about 30% of the injury or worse crashes are involving the vulnerable users. So definitely an overrepresentation of vulnerable users in the injury or worse crashes. Looking at other municipalities within Colorado, there's not, we do the best to pick similar size cities to try and show, just get a good sense of where we're at. Good job, Boulder. You guys are doing great. Arvada doing great as well. We've got room for improvement on our end, for sure. Next slide, please. Same information, just on a national level. Again, Longmont, when we look at where we're at compared to similar communities around 100,000 population, we're sort of in the middle of the pack. So always looking for room for improvement. Next slide, please. As we do this data analysis, one of the outcomes, one of what we come out with is identifying our high crash locations. We use a weighted crash index as a screening tool to figure out where we may have problems. We weight injury or fatal crashes more than property damage only crashes. And in the end, we shake out with the composite crash index. These are the high volume signalized intersections. So once we get this list, we do a deeper dive into what may be leading to those crashes or what might be some countermeasures to resolve the crashes we're seeing there. We do have some that sign of progress. Main and Pike is an intersection that's been on this list for a number of years. And we've done a couple safety projects. Most recently was to convert the northbound left from a protected permissive to a protected only operation. And we've seen a substantial reduction in crashes just to that change. And it's actually fallen out of this list here in the last year or so. We had another intersection on a smaller, lower volume street, 9th and Deerwood. It was a high crash location. We installed a traffic signal, and that's another one that's come off of this list here. Next slide, please. Safety projects, anytime we're looking at how do we resolve any of these crash issues, we can do high cost, low cost, depending on what the proper solution is. 9th and Deerwood is a traffic signal I mentioned before. That one, relatively high cost. Something like changing your left turn phasing can be pretty low cost, or modifying signage is obviously a chance where you can definitely get a big bang for the buck in terms of safety improvement. Next slide, please. So for vulnerable users, some of the things we're doing at our traffic signals, we primarily switched to a thermal detection camera at all of our signalized intersections. There's still a few that are on video, but in my experience, the thermal cameras are pretty accurate and a good tool for detecting the peds and the bicyclists. They definitely have a better success rate of detecting peds and bicyclists than traditional loops or even optical for us. We put in the leading pedestrian interval at many intersections where we have higher volumes of pedestrians. And we've also used the ped to protect a handful of intersections, which is where the operation of the left turn changes, whether it's protected only if the ped button is pushed. And that's been an effective tool at helping improve the safety at some of those intersections. And then where we can, we float the walk again, so that the walk comes up without any required input from the user. The next slide. I think that's about all I have to cover for today. If there's any questions, happy to answer any.
Okay, thank you. So far, no questions in the chat. Is there someone about to ask a question? Okay, I actually have one question about how the thermal cameras operate.
Any more specific on the question, or?
Are they detecting the thermal from the bikes and peds, or how are they operating?
Yeah, so if you can go back a slide or two where I had that picture. So that's the image from the camera. It's a heat signature that you're seeing. It's not like a typical video camera image. So it's just, like I said, if you see a pedestrian in here, it would be in a lighter color. Like if you notice at the bottom of the vehicles, you see it's kind of a brighter white. That's just a higher temperature.
Mm-hmm.
And so once it hits that detection zone or the loop, that's when it puts the call in based on that heat signature.
I see. Thank you. We did get one. Devin asked, could you please show the local Peer City comparison again?
Sure, and go back a couple slides there.
That's some good data.
And this is just purely a fatal crashes per population. This data comes either, I think I got all of this data from CDOT's website. So I'm not sure if there's any discrepancies that may show up, whether it comes from FARS or your local data, but this is strictly from CDOT's available data.
And then Clark asked, are these reports live and online? Some great stuff happening. Would love to highlight and share.
Yeah, I can share a link to where ours is at and where you can access this online.
Thanks. Any other questions for Tyler at Longmont in Longmont? Oh, can you email that Peer City data? I think we can send out the entire PowerPoint after the presentation. Is that right?
Yeah.
Amy?
Yes.
Yeah, so we'll send out the whole PowerPoint so you have everything, because there's a lot of great information on this. I don't see any other questions, so I'll hand it back over to Amy.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Tyler. Great presentation today. Let's see. All right, so we'll move on to the town of Lyons now. Just pull up the presentation. All right, can you all see the Lyons presentation now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then whenever you are ready, Philip.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Philip Strom, town planner for Lyons. Switching gears a bit from the prior presentations. As a smaller community, we obviously don't have the transportation planning and engineering resources, but of some of the larger communities. So we really rely on Boulder County and CDOT for that assistance. So today I thought I'd highlight 3 transportation and mobility projects that we're working on to just inform the group and hopefully identify some opportunities to coordinate and align with Boulder County's Vision Zero plan going forward. So next slide. First project is the US 36 Multimodal Improvements Project. This project is will provide more parking for the town and also create a more pedestrian friendly environment to hopefully encourage people, visitors to visit the town, and for businesses to expand their frontage towards the Broadway to the south. The project is about a $2.5 million project, and we're just starting design now, which will progress over the next year, and with completion just prior to the summer of 2023. Next slide. So this shows an overall map of the project, extending from the west of town all the way out to McConnell Drive. Next slide. A large majority of the work will take place on Broadway, US 36, from 5th to 3rd. And you can see this is expanding the on-street parking, somewhere around 50 some spaces, as well as frontage roads to the north for those businesses, and a new multimodal path to the south. Next slide. Just continuing east, the existing multimodal path will be improved along with a new bus and bike shelter. Next slide. And we'll just continue out to McConnell Drive, where again, improving the existing multimodal trail there. Next slide. The next project I wanted to touch on was the St. Vrain Creek Regional Trail Extension. This connects that multimodal trail I was just discussing at McConnell with a new trail from McConnell Drive out to the US 36-66 intersection. This will be a new crusher fine trail with 3 ditch crossing bridges. It's a $1.2 million project, and we're currently procuring a designer and hope to wrap up the project next year. Next slide. This shows the corridor planned for the trail as a former BNSF owned property. This is all town property though, and it will extend that multimodal trail from McConnell out to the US 36-66 intersection. Next slide. And the last project is the 4th Avenue Ped Bridge and Pedestrian Improvement Project. This is funded by the Safe Routes to School program. The project goal is to connect the schools, better connect the schools to the town. And this includes the replacement of the 4th Avenue Ped Bridge that was destroyed in the 2013 flood, and a new trail connection to the south connecting to Bone Park. And to the north, the sidewalks will be improved and bike lanes added. And so design will be wrapping up now. We're going to advertise for a contractor any minute, and should be wrapping up early in the summer. Next slide. This map shows the north end of the project. So this is just improving the sidewalks, adding bike lanes. And then you can see at the very bottom, the little orange slice just shows the bridge. So next slide. Continuing with the project, you can see the 4th Avenue bridge replacement, and then the new crusher fine trail connecting to Bone Park. And so with that, next slide, that concludes my presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions for Philip and Lyons? I don't have any posted yet.
I have one.
Go ahead.
Hey, Philip, thanks for this. This is very specific. So, you know, I know a lot of cyclists ride in from Boulder and then up to Lyons, and where Highway 36 is going north and meets 66 and heads left right into Lyons there's about a quarter-mile section with no bike lane there. It's as a cyclist, it's super sketchy. And then all of a sudden this bike lane just kind of starts. Do you know, is there any plan for upgrading that little section there, or any improvements there, you know of?
No, not currently. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Hopefully I know the Crusher Fine Trail will hopefully provide, you know, some cyclist access there, but this would be, that'd be more of a CDOT question, honestly, because that's a CDOT control. So I'm not aware of anything though planned currently.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, Philip and Clark. Hi, this is Kim with the Town of Lyons too. I don't know if Alex Hyde-Wright is on the call. but I think there's some striping that Boulder County is working on from the whole 36 corridor up through till Apple Valley.
Thanks, Kim. Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I was going to say Boulder County, we do have a striping improvement project in collaboration with CDOT for the 36 corridor, starting at left hand and going on north. The specific location you're talking about is going to be, I think, tricky. I think we'll be able to maybe shorten that gap a little bit, but not completely eliminate the gap in bike lane, just because in order to do that, we'd need to move some of the median or the curb and gutter there, which is outside the scope of the striping project, because I don't think there's enough room with just restriping to create a full bike lane through that entire stretch.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thanks. Thanks for the update from Lions. I'll pass it back over to Amy.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Philip. Let's see. All right. So Alex, Hydrite, and I are now going to talk for a few minutes about what Boulder County has been up to with our Vision Zero plan. So again, as a quick overview and refresher, the Vision Zero plan comes from the county's most recent transportation master plan update, in which we adopted a quantitative safety goal to eliminate serious injuries and fatal traffic crashes in unincorporated Boulder County by 2035. So in support of our Vision Zero goal, we're continuing to develop the county's first Vision Zero plan, which includes an analysis of traffic crash data from 2009 to 2018 and an action plan. We'll kind of discuss where we're at with the development of the plan and next steps for the rest of the year and early 2022. So for a quick overview of the timeline for this work, first, there was a good amount of work done to develop the crash analysis. This included cleaning our crash data set from CDOT to ensure that we started with an accurate data set. Then mostly included work developing figures and maps to present the trends and the patterns that we were seeing in the data. We then reviewed a draft of the crash analysis with both internal and external stakeholders, as well as with the public earlier this year. After that, we worked on the action plan and have received substantial input from both CDOT staff and internal engineering staff during review meetings. We're still currently in the phase of finalizing the draft action plan, and next steps for us include preparing a scope of high crash locations we identified in the crash analysis that are not already being reviewed as part of a separate project. And we'll hire a consultant to analyze those high crash locations and recommend specific safety improvements for each location based on crash histories and all our findings. So with our Vision Zero target and goals, part of that work includes tracking the number of fatal crashes that occur each year. So here we are displaying the number of fatal crashes that occurred each year in Boulder County from 2009 to 2021. The trend has remained about the same since 2009, with an average of 19 fatal crashes each year. As well, we do not have 2020 comprehensive data available yet, and 2021 data is being tracked as crash reports come in, and it's current as of November 4th. Next, here we're displaying the number of fatal crashes that occurred each year in the Dr. Cog region from, 2009 to 2020. And there was an average of 210 fatal crashes each year, and there has been a slight increase in the number of crashes since 2014. Here we are showing the number of fatal crashes that occurred each year in Colorado, going back to 2002 up to 2021. And the number of crashes has been relatively constant over time, with the most significant drop around 2011. And both 2020 and 2021 data are preliminary as of the release of this report presented here. So next steps for us with our Vision Zero action plan are to finalize a scope of our high crash locations, again, that are not already under review as part of a separate project. So for example, we're excluding State Highway 119 or the Diagonal Highway from our scope because Boulder County is currently designing a separated bikeway for the corridor, and CDOT is also looking at the highway's intersections as part of their safety and mobility project. Once we finalize this scope of locations, we are going to hire an engineering consultant in 2022 to review the crash history of all locations in our scope, complete safety evaluations or road safety audits, and recommend specific safety improvements for each location based on all findings. So the part 1 traffic crash analysis portion of the plan identified all common crash types in unincorporated Boulder County and specific locations where these trends took place. So further analysis of these locations is necessary to identify specific countermeasures to eliminate those crash types we are seeing. We have structured the action plan here by most common crash trends at first at our intersections, on our corridors, at our high crash curbs, and at trail crossings. Of our severe, so both fatal and major injury intersection related crashes, we found that approach turn and broadside crashes were the two most common types. A handful of the top intersections with approach turn crash histories are already being looked at. So therefore, we're eliminating all those locations from our scope that are already being looked at or have been reconstructed recently. For example, US 287 and State Highway 52 ranked the highest when looking at approach turn and broadside crashes, though CDOT converted all the signals at the intersection to protected left turn phasing, and the intersection is being reconstructed in 2022. So that being said, we're going to focus our efforts on evaluating the intersections that are not already being reviewed. As well, single vehicle crashes at curbs on roads, especially in the mountains, was another common trend we saw in the data. A handful of these high crash curves are already being looked at by CDOT as they're updating strip maps, which will identify any revisions necessary to existing signage. As well, crossing centerline crashes and single vehicle run off the road crashes were also common trends. So again, any roads that are already being looked at are going to be excluded from our scope and will kind of help us determine which roads to focus our efforts on. And lastly, we identified all our corridors with bicycle and pedestrian crash histories. We found in the analysis that just over half of the bike and ped crashes occurred at intersections, and a few of the pedestrian crashes took place at trail crossings. Most of the corridors that ranked highest on our list here are already undergoing safety improvements or have recently. So again, we'll focus on those locations that call for attention. And then one final note here is that while a handful of these locations are undergoing safety improvements or have recently part of our Vision Zero work moving forward, we'll also include continuing to monitor crash trends at these locations if there are any, and then including all these findings in our future Vision Zero updates. So I'll hand it off to Alex now if you want to say anything else, but we'll open it up to questions now.
Thanks, Amy. So to wrap up, we just want to point people back to the Boulder County Vision Zero website, which has all these resources. It also includes an interactive crash map for all the crashes in Boulder County, a dashboard showing the number of fatal crashes so far in 2021, and then a running list of all the news articles related to each fatal crash that we've experienced in the calendar year, and then links to our crash analysis and other Vision Zero documents. So with that, we will open it up to any questions.
Okay, I don't see any questions yet, and I don't see any hand. Oh, there's a hand up from Jeff Butts.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, I'm trying to start my video. Okay, there it goes. All right, now you can see me. This is super interesting, especially when talking about the speeds. And the question that I had was the progressive English in that speed. And I was curious if there's been any analysis done. I think my question is mostly around the city of Boulder, but I think Tyler, you may have talked about speeding as well being an element. And then Amy within the Dr. Cog area. And I'm just curious if there's any analysis being done on speeds themselves, 20, 30, 40, 50, 70 mile an hour, because 36 mile an hour speeding is different than 46 mile an hour speeding. So has there been any sort of gradation done in that area? I'll open it up, I guess, whoever wants to answer that, but it's something I'm curious about.
Well, I know there's been a lot of research done that's more or less conclusive that increased speeds result in increased severities, injury severities, and fatalities, and that the severity goes up exponentially as speed increases. And I think the research is pretty definitive on that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I was wondering if there's been any analysis done at the local level, maybe in the city of Boulder or anywhere on, or is that not even captured within the reports themselves, what the speeds were, or it's just speeding? Is that like a difficult thing to capture?
Jeff, sorry if I cut someone off. I'll step in here real quick. So Jeff, I think that's something that we're looking at, is trying to do a further analysis in terms of crashes involving speeding by speeding amounts. And I think Matt Duncan and Lakewood had done a pretty good presentation about super speeders and how they're classifying those and quantifying that in their crashes. So definitely a good resource would be Matt, something that we're looking at doing and doing some more research on how we add that or look at that in our reports.
Okay, and then I'm going to ask this question from Sue before I call on Jacob. Sue Prant asks, is there any analysis around the ages of drivers causing speeding crashes?
We do have the age and gender available of the driver involved in the crash in the data. And that's the only demographic data that we have available.
And I think just from memory, I think it is, am I correct that the crashes are males of various ages? Is that mostly correct? The driver one, the driver causing.
Sorry, are you referring to a particular crash type or?
Just in general, I see that. I anecdotally, it's served, as memory serves. Do you think that's correct?
Devin, I think you had a slide on that from the City of Boulder data. Do you want to address that?
Oh, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, happy to chime in. Yes, in Boulder, we saw that 78% of our severe speeding crashes involve the male driver, and that the age of those male drivers was between 25 and 34 years old. They were involved in about a third of our severe speeding crashes.
Okay, thanks. And then Jacob's got his hand up for a while. Thanks for your patience.
Yeah, no worries. Just going back to the speeding question that Jeff raised. At Dr. Cog, we recently completed a public education campaign that we ran through October called Slow Speeding. And it was based on the notion that I think was brought up in the question about the fact that sometimes, yes, we've got the super speeders and that's really scary and important, but based on our analysis of the crash data, that oftentimes it's actually, and we all do this, right? It's the people who, go 50 and a 40 or go, like 10, 15, 20 miles over the speed limit. And hence the sort of hook of the campaign of slow speeding. We're speeding just a little bit, but the data for us actually showed that was actually really important in terms of kind of crash outcomes based on that slow speeding term. So it's something that, as I said, we recently finished a public education campaign around, and something that we're trying to draw attention to.
Thank you. And I think that partially answers Sue's second question. Wondering about if you do any education campaign targeting younger male drivers.
We have not specifically sort of been that micro-targeted, but yeah.
And then Clark got his hand up.
I have a related question about age. And, I think it was Boulder's presentation was that the aging population, the older population is also showing an increase. And I think, especially in Boulder, the percentage of older community members is growing and is going to continue. And I've been, I have two sets of parents who are getting close to that age where they probably shouldn't be driving. And just maybe there's a question for everybody, but is there anything being done at a state level to kind of address the question of when somebody should be retested for their driving capability when they're over a certain age, let's say 75 or 80. I don't know really what the rules are right now, but curious about that if anybody knows.
I'm not entirely certain. Is anyone familiar with that?
So I'm Sergeant Vanderlee, City of Boulder Police Department. I can talk about it just a little bit. There isn't anything standard in place that says, when you hit 75, you have to be reevaluated. Obviously, we all have to go and get our licenses as required every 5 years. We, as a whole, with our traffic unit, if a person is involved and we think age was part of the process or disability was part of the process, we can put them in for an reevaluation with the ticket. The ticket's not necessary for the reevaluation, two different processes. So we can put them in for an evaluation even though they weren't the at-fault driver. And then personally, you can have your member of your family evaluated. You just go on to the Department of Transportation or the DMV's website and request that. And you have to do it, I think, via fax, and it's not anonymous. So they can find out who put you in case that's an issue.
Thank you. That was some good information, Robin.
That's great. Thanks.
Yep.
There's any other questions? I don't see anything else in the chat other than that Sue was thinking of the driver going 90 causing the double fatal on 34th and the diagonal when she was asking her questions about educating drivers. But that wasn't a question. That was just, oh, wait, one more thing is coming in, I think. Nope.
Hey, this is DK. How's it going, Alex? Hey, that is something that I think we'll definitely look at when we look to our Vision Zero action plan this year and revamping some of our safety education outreach to be consistent with the types of crashes that we're seeing.
Thanks, DK. Okay, back to Amy.
Okay, perfect. So now I'll just kind of open it up to all of our groups and agencies that didn't present today. If you'd like to speak for a minute or two about what you're up to and anything like that. So I'll just open it up. Alex, would you like to give an update?
Okay, this is Alex Aranello from Town of Superior. I'm Public Works Director. While we don't have a formal Vision Zero program, we do have a traffic and safety committee that's composed of 3 members from the town board, and that they've been in place for 15, 20 years, and they kind of oversee our traffic safety program. We produce an annual crash report. Been doing that for the last 10 years. And that's really useful in identifying high crash locations, although we don't get very many crashes. Our town is about 15,000 people, and we get about 100 to 150 crashes per year. Those are down about 40% during the COVID period. In terms of injury accidents, we only get 7 to 13 injury crashes a year, and we haven't had a fatality in the town in a decade. So we have very good community in terms of safety and design, and population that it really appreciates the slow speeds and other things that we do. We track, we have a number of innovative things that we do. We have 5 modern roundabouts, which have very few injury crashes. We built a diverging diamond interchange at US 36 McCaslin that has significant safety components. And to date, it has probably about 20% fewer crashes than the pre-diverging diamond configuration. We had a bike lane striping committee formed, and a couple of members. Alexander was on there, and Matt Muir, I see he's on the call. But they helped us look at McCaslin and other arterials in town where we have acceleration and deceleration lanes, and where we have bike lanes that cross these turn lanes, and how to stripe them. And with the green bar mixing zones. And we did that on one intersection in McCaslin. We actually wrote a grant and got funding to do all our arterial intersections with green bar striping through our acceleration and deceleration lanes. We have a set of traffic calming standards and our street standards that really look at unimpeded street length and any segment that does not have a curve or stop sign or a traffic signal. If it's more than 1,200 feet, that would be a candidate for some traffic calming feature, like a speed hump or neck down or whatever. And so those are written in our traffic calming, our actual street standards. And if you go to our downtown Superior development that's been under construction, we've implemented that throughout the development. The maximum speed limit in downtown Superior is 25 miles an hour. We have narrow streets, wide sidewalks, bulb outs, raised intersections, etc. in downtown Superior. So it's been a traffic calming design from day one. So those are the types of things we're doing. We are also looking at possibly doing near misses. We have 4 traffic surveillance cameras. There's capability of monitoring those and coming up with near misses, and to try to do a more proactive approach to traffic safety than waiting for crashes to occur and then go out and doing something. So be interesting to see how that happens, how that turns out. So that's what we're doing. Thanks.
Thanks, Alex. That's
thank you.
Great information, and knock on wood, when you say you haven't had any fatalities, that's a great trend to continue. Anyone else? Amy, sorry, I kind of stepped in, but anyone
no
else?
worries.
We've got another couple of minutes that we have for the roundtable.
DK?
Oh, hey, good afternoon. I just wanted to just remind folks about the World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims on November 21st. There's a lot of information through the Vision Zero network about this event, this day coming up. And if your municipality, if your jurisdictions or organizations can help support, promote the day and really acknowledge those people who have died or have been seriously injured in a crash. I think it's important to do that. We recognize this across the region. It's also a day to recognize our first responders, like our police department and fire departments who are out there every day and addressing crashes. And they've got really hard jobs. They're seeing the worst of it. And we really need them. And we appreciate what they do for our community. And so if your organizations can put information out about that, I think that would be helpful, and it would also help your constituencies recognize that you recognize that we have a lot of work to do, and we remembering those people who have lost their lives. Additionally, there's an event planned in downtown Boulder on November 21st, the evening from 5:30 to 6:30 at 15th and Pearl Street, the Memorial Walk. We're working with Trinity Willerton from It Could Be Me to get people together. We'll have a short talk about things, and then we'll do a walk west on Pearl Street to 9th and Pearl. So 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. on November 21st at 15th and Pearl. Thanks, that's all.
Thanks, DK. Katrina Cloberdance from CDOT she has a quick update, and Sam from CDOT's also got his hand up, and Jacob. So I'm not sure who to go first. Katrina, how about you?
Sure. I'm not sure why, but I'm not able to put my hand up in the thing, so that's why I use chat. But so we are moving along with our bike ped safety study that we've been doing. We're finalizing the locations for further analysis and are getting ready to go out and do some field work to gather some more information on those. Also, we're getting ready to start a new round of intersection prioritization study. We've done a couple of those in the past, so I'll be reaching out to find out people's sort of top locations that they would like us to take extra look at. Just getting that scoped out right now. And then I wanted to let you all know as well that FHWA, their toolbox of proven safety countermeasures, they've actually updated it with several new ones for the first time in a long time. So if you just Google FHWA proven safety countermeasures, you'll be able to take a look at all of those existing ones plus the new ones and get more information on those. But they have included a few more bike ped. One of the notable ones is appropriate speed limits for all road users. One of the things that CDOT is doing currently is we have a speed management task force that is updating our speed management policy and how we evaluate and set speed limits. So more to come on that in the future.
Katrina, I believe the FHWA is doing a webinar on those countermeasures next week.
Yes, on Monday next week.
Thanks, Katrina. And I think Jacob had his hand up before Sam. So Jacob and then Sam.
Sure, no worries. Could I actually, Alexandra and Amy, could I share my screen for a moment?
Yeah, sure. Here, let me stop sharing.
Thanks. I actually put a single slide together for our update. So let me see if I can share. Okay, are you all seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take just a moment, but I just kind of want to give you all an overview of what we're doing at DRCOG when it comes to safety and Vision Zero. As I think many of you know, because you participate in it, we have our monthly regional Vision Zero work group. Everyone is invited. It's the whole point to get the region together, presentations, information sharing, implementation of our regional Vision Zero plan. It's a really important work group for us. We meet the first Tuesday of each month the second Tuesday of each month at 10 a.m. And if you're interested and not already participating, please reach out to me. We'd love to have you. We're in the recruitment process to hire a dedicated safety planner. This is something that will be new for us. I believe we're one of the first MPO council governments in the country to have a dedicated safety position, but we're actually breaking it off from our kind of bike ped active transportation safety planner. We want someone dedicated and focused specifically on safety and regional Vision Zero. I mentioned our slow speeding public education campaign. We wrapped that up at the end of October, tentatively planning to present the results of that campaign at our December monthly Regional Vision Zero work group meeting. We also, sorry, let me get some things out of the way on my screen. We've also, in our communications and marketing division, Dr. Cog have been working on a Vision Zero safety pledge. So that's out there. And if you're interested in that, again, please reach out to me. We recently adopted a complete streets toolkit. My board adopted that in October. And so not specifically around safety, but it's meant to work hand in hand with our regional Vision Zero plan and really take some of those things to the next level. And it's also a bridge to some of the things that we'll be doing in our transportation improvement program coming up with our call for funding. So really important tool in our toolbox on the safety side. And then FHWA, we learned recently there's a couple of things going on there. They have something that's called the focused approach to safety, which basically takes some statistical and mathematical analysis looking at crash trends around the country at the sort of MPO level and the state DOT level. And we learned recently that for 2021, both Dr. Cog and CDOT have been designated as this sort of focused approach to safety kind of partner that FHWA is going to work with us. So we're excited about that. The FHWA has also started a brand new program that's basically called the Vision Zero Partnership. And the idea is that you can be a mentor or a mentee or a partner or something. I've applied Dr. Cog to be in this pilot program that we can sort of, do some information exchange and some peer learning with some of our other peers around the country around taking our Vision Zero program to the next level. Something else we've been working on is when it comes to crash data, complicated about how it kind of flows up to the state level and back to the regional level and how we process it and work with it and make it available. But essentially, in a nutshell, we've been exploring whether there's other ways, better ways that we can be more efficient, more accurate in terms of the geolocating of the crash data, how we get the crash data, how we make it available to all of you. So we're still feeling our way through that, but we're looking to see if there's some appetite for something around a potential regional crash data consortium. And then finally, part of our work of our Regional Vision Zero program at Dr. Cog has been participating in peer exchanges. We did one a couple of weeks ago with several MPOs and FHWA, Minnesota State DOT, big peer exchange around Regional Vision Zero and safety. We've done some other kind of one-offs. I did an interview with the University of North Carolina last week that's looking at every MPO in the country in terms of their Regional Vision Zero safety work and putting together sort of a document around best practices around Regional Vision Zero programs. So that's something that is important to us to both contribute to and to learn from. So much more that we're doing, but that's some of the highlights that I wanted to present.
Thank you, Jacob. We're a little over time on our next agenda item, but we got some really good information and I'm sure I'll get some more good info from Sam. So go ahead.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Just want to let everybody know we're going to be investing more federal dollars in our traffic safety awareness campaigns literally than ever before. We're going to stop putting together new creative material. We're going to take all that creative material, that funds that would normally go to creative, and we're going to put it in a paid media buy because we're so incredibly concerned about what we're seeing in the rise in traffic fatalities around the state. So we're going to be launching everything from pedestrian safety campaigns to DUI campaigns, seatbelt campaigns, motorcycle campaigns, and the like. So super excited to do that. That will start in January, where our pedestrian safety campaign is going to lean into the dangers around nighttime. Since most pedestrians are hit at night, we've never done that before, so we're excited to do that. And as always, if anybody out there wants to use any of our awareness assets, any of our ads, they're welcome to. Any of the still ads, any of the videos, they're all welcome to, you're all welcome to use that. And another thing, since Colorado is also leading the way around marijuana and traffic safety awareness, we are participating in a study that we think will help inform states around the country on how to reach cannabis consumers with the dangers of driving high. And that's the research will be done in early next year. And I'm glad to pass it along to others if they want to start messaging around the dangers of cannabis and driving. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And I don't know if you have a link to the messages that you could post in the chat or.
Sure, will do.
Thank you. And then Landon's got his hand up, but we are getting close to time. So Amy, did you want to cut off the time, the poll questions, or should I keep what, should we move on to the poll questions, or should I have?
Yeah, I think it would be great to just keep moving or keep going with having people speak.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd love to hear what Landon has to say too.
Okay. Go ahead, Landon.
Okay, thanks, Alexandra. Thanks, Amy. This will be quick. I'm Landon Hilliard with the Boulder Valley School District. I'm the Safe Routes to School Program Coordinator. And I just wanted to give you the quickest update about where we are in our Safe Routes efforts, which, as you know, is a counterpart to Vision Zero. We are suffering a driver shortage as well as other labor shortages that has resulted in the reduction of school bus service. And because of that, we've provided crossing guards at certain key locations, 5 schools, 7 locations, with a combination of paid and volunteer crossing guards. What we've learned, and this comes from Cami Edson with the county, is that adult presence is by far the largest factor that parents give to allowing their children to walk and bike to school. So crossing guards, while it's kind of almost a quaint tool, is actually highly effective. And we think of ourselves as almost having a peace presence in that we're helping children across, we're greeting parents, and so it's community building. Anyway, I just wanted to give you that update. One of the lessons that we have from this crossing guard, standing up this crossing guard program, is the fact that the resources at the state level, local level, county level aren't there for people to begin their own crossing guard program. So one of the ideas we're in discussion with Boulder County and this idea of a Safe Routes Hub is to produce some kind of toolkit that would allow parent volunteers or people paid to stand up a crossing guard program, lickety split with resources through the Boulder Valley School District and partners. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thank you. Some more really good info. Okay, back to Amy.
Perfect. Did anyone else want to say anything, or should we jump into the poll questions? Let's see. All right. Let's see polls. Okay, are you all able to see the first poll question here?
Yep.
Okay. And then if you're not an agency or you're just representing a group or with a group, I guess what would be your biggest obstacle for advocating for safety, or similar to that? Looks like we got about half people who've answered so far. All right. Just give everyone 10 more seconds. All right, so it looks like, let's see. Share results. So lots of people marked funding as the biggest challenge, and staff availability also ranked pretty high here. Let's see, go to the next question here. And here we're just asking how often would it be helpful for this group to meet?
Well, people are answering that question. I have a thing. I'll just interject since that this is one of the few meetings I really hope goes back to in person. I really miss the networking that happens before and after this meeting.
Yeah, I heard there was food before too, so be something to look forward to.
Yeah, if Boulder County is willing to, flip the bill for the food, we're all about it. Yeah, the in-person meetings were great, but I would say that there are some advantages to the virtual meeting with this particular group, just because we're so, we're all spread out throughout the, the region here, throughout the county. And I think it's a convenient way for folks to chime in to this and learn about what's going on. And so while in person is great to see everyone's faces, I think this is working pretty well. And I think that Boulder County's done a great job with, I guess, building the membership to our community membership, our partnership. growing the partnership is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Yeah, it definitely offers a lot of flexibility with meeting virtually. All right, looks like most folks responded with once every quarter, which I think we're about on track to be doing for the next few. And our next question here is, do you feel that your agency or group that you're representing is well positioned to make progress on Vision Zero in 2022? Right. Looks like 90% of the group so far has responded yes, so that's good.
I think, Amy, a question for a future meeting might be what constitutes progress?
Right.
It's pretty open, and what we've been struggling with is, if we do have any severe injury, crashes and or fatalities, which we've had, it's hard to show progress in Vision Zero because zero is the goal, right? Mm-hmm. And so what other types of goals and objectives can our region create and be consistent with in terms of expressing what does progress mean?
Yeah, I agree, and that's definitely something good to think about moving forward. Okay. And then one last question.
Amy, real quick on that last question, I just wanted to open it up. Does anybody who answered no want to share why they selected no?
No. I didn't answer no though, but
Alex, I'll respond. I'm one of the no's. I would have answered an intermediate maybe or something like that, but because it was a stark yes or no, I went for the no. It has a lot to do with lack of resources and funding and for the Boulder Valley School District, and the fact that the primary role or purpose of the school district is not safety improvements, but rather education, obviously. So that is a little bit of why I said no for that answer.
Thanks, Landon.
All right, now our last question here, just wondering what you all think if we should invite elected officials to our future community partnership meetings.
The phone, can you hear?
Did someone just speak up?
Yep, we got someone from a phone number. Yep.
Is that Kathleen or?
Oh, hi, this is Cami. Can you hear me?
Oh,
Yep.
yes, we can hear you,
Go ahead,
Cami.
Cami.
Oh, hi. One of the things I was going to suggest on the previous comment about how do we measure progress potentially, I think that could come in handy when we were talking about looking at some of the other E's, not just engineering, but maybe progress we're making in education or encouragement or equity, some of those other E's as a way to support the engineering practices might be a way for people to track and report on progress as we incorporate those other E's into the action plan.
Thanks, Cami.
Right. Looks like, well, 60% of the group thinks that we should, while the remainder do not. So let's see. And then Alex, I don't know if you want to wrap up for us. It looks like we just have about 1 minute left.
Just wanted to end by thanking everybody for making time for this. We really appreciate the participation in the dialogue. And then I think everyone should have Amy and my contact information. But if you have any suggestions for topics at future meetings or ideas of how to structure the meetings to make them more helpful to you, we are certainly open to suggestions. So please feel free to reach out, and then we'll also be reaching out to see if anybody would like to volunteer to make a presentation at the future meeting, which based on our schedule, we anticipate the next community partnership meeting would be in spring of 2022. And so unless anyone else has anything to add, we thank you for your participation and wish you a happy week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.